And good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, and of course, anytime, anywhere on the KIDO Talk Radio app. Our special guest with us this hour of the program, David Ferdinand, joining us from David Ferdinand Enterprises. Good to have you with us.
Well, it is great to be here.
You know, we think of radio and we think of the digital world and the world that we live in, but this radio station has such a great history. You, Art Gregory, Joe Bell, you continue to honor the history of broadcasting here in the great state of Idaho.
We are honoring it. I'll tell you, Idaho, if you think about it, Kevin, there was a guy named Philo Farnsworth that in a high school classroom drew out the first cathode ray tube for television in the state of Idaho. And you think, look, Idaho has contributed tremendously, not only to broadcasting, but to television and radio, and with KIDO being the first radio station in the state. I mean, you think of all the tremendous history. You're absolutely right.
Well, and we go back to the students. We go back to Boise High so many years ago.
Wow. Yeah. You know, for a school teacher to say, why don't we start our own radio station? I mean, give the kids an opportunity to learn broadcasting and learn this new thing that's on the horizon, and then from that think about it, putting an antenna up on Boise High School. This is before they had the big auditorium, before they had all kinds of stuff. And of course, the history, Art Gregory, knows it well. He could tell you, the dates and times. I'm not adept at the exact dates and times, but I'm telling you, when you're talking in the 1915s, the 1922s, and in 1922, when you put a radio station or an FM signal or an AM signal, and then put a television station on the air. KIDO's got a tremendous history for not only for the broadcasting, but for the talents that went through that seat you're sitting in. Tremendous, tremendous history.
Right. And, of course, for people just moving into the Treasure Valley, it's always great that they know the history. And, of course, Channel 7 was KIDO television.
That's right. And Kiddo Davidson, you think KIDO came from, KIDO, when I was on KIDO back in the 80s, we had to say it, KIDO, just to make sure that people got the connection. I think they already got the connection of that, but yes. And then Georgia Davidson, when KIDO was sold to the Boeing family, Bill Boeing, when it sold, KTVB had to actually change their call letters, and and I don't know if you've heard the story, but there was the radio or the television advertising group nationally. It was KTVB was kind of named after Television Bureau or Television Broadcast Bureau, and of course it also looks like Treasure Valley Broadcasting or those kinds of things. KTVB was then changed from KIDO, but boy, what a tremendous background.
Well, and again, they came from us. Channel 7.
That's right.
They did.
I like that, Kevin.
David Ferdinand joining us, our great friend here, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Commercial real estate man, past president of God and Country, the God and Country Festival. We'll talk more about that coming up. And also former Canyon County Commissioner.
Yes.
You are of this area. You love this area. Let's talk a little bit about the changes that's happening from your perspective as someone who has lived here forever.
Yeah, well, born and raised in Canyon County, graduated from good old Nampa High School when there was one high school.
Right.
In fact, we just had a meeting with one of the gentlemen that is the executive vice president of secondary education for the Nampa School District, and listening to him, there are 5 high schools in the Nampa School District now. I was part of the group that planned Skyview High School, which was our second high school.
There's so many Nampa Bulldogs, you, Bob Zimmerman, so many others.
Well, we had 383 in our graduating class, and there's a lot of them still around here. A lot of them went, through education, went to Boise College, Boise State College, and now, of course, Boise State University, as you've been talking about this morning.
Sure.
All of those things that go to really make up a community. So a lot of history.
Right, a lot of history for people that are just coming to the area. What do you say to them? Because there are, 1,000 people coming in a month, if you believe the statistics. You see it on the real estate side. You see it on the government side.
I do.
A lot of people coming in. Did you ever think, back in the day, that this would be happening?
Yeah. Listen, when my wife and I were dating in high school, we had about 17,000, 18,000 people living in Nampa. And now there's, I heard from Jeff at the Transportation Committee yesterday for the Nampa Comprehensive Plan that 27,000 people a day drive down 12th Avenue, Highway 45. And so, no, did we think, how big is this place going to be? But I'll tell you, Kevin, when you talk about history, if you think about that sweet little road, 12th Avenue, that went from Highway 45 in through downtown Nampa, I was explaining to some of the younger people that don't remember, that was a tree-lined boulevard like Harrison Boulevard or Warm Springs Boulevard here in Boise. That was a tree-lined boulevard with beautiful houses on each side of the road. It's now a 4-lane road. They took all those trees out several years ago and made it that 4-lane road just to move the traffic. So we have seen a lot of change, since those early years.
Right. And, of course, we see the changes, the buildings, and things happening. So how do we manage the growth?
Well, I know that a lot of people say, well, growth has to pay for growth. I think to an extent that is true. I think that cities are required, when you become a city and you designate, I can tell you this as a former Canyon County Commissioner, that the impact areas that these cities carve out and say, I don't want Meridian going past this line. I don't want Nampa going past this line. I don't want Caldwell going past this line. Boise needs to stay on this side of the Eagle. Star needs to do this. Middleton needs to. You see what I'm saying? What ends up happening is they carve out an area, and if they carve out that area and say, we want that as our impact area, then, in my opinion, that city needs to be responsible for the city services that they need to provide when they in fact become a municipality. They do that without, with the legislative mandate that says, hey, if you're going to carve this area out, you need to take care of it. So I think it has to do with the city planning.
Right, and you take a look at Middleton, right in the middle of things.
Wow. I was there yesterday looking at houses and watching what's happening up and down Highway 45.
Right, but, and this happened a couple weeks ago where you had the city selling a park. And I don't understand. You would never see that in Boise.
No.
You would never see that in Boise.
No.
And we talked about it last week. But the idea of the people that bought it, they seem like nice people. We'll see what happens with it. But I never could imagine a city selling a park that was donated to the city.
No. Historically, that should not happen. Historically, for instance, Canyon County has a number of civil attorneys that, Brian Taylor, who's the prosecuting attorney for Canyon County, Brian's job is to make sure that they have civil attorneys that counsel those that are in office to make sure they are doing things correctly. Now, the mayor of Middleton, I think after the fact did in fact say, well, we need to take a look at the history. Well, you go to sell a piece of property, I can tell you this, as a former elected official, that if you have a surplus piece of property, a surplus truck, a used sheriff's vehicle, you have to go through a certain process to take that from the tax rolls and turn that into a public item. First of all, you got to check with every other government entity that has first shot at a piece of land. So if they, in fact, were following the process, they would have found that out. How in the world it came to be, and I don't want to second guess, the city council and the mayor of Middleton, but certainly. Anytime you have surplus property, there is a process that you go through. However, Nampa, has done similar things with taking parcels of property and turning them into use with commercial use or private use too. So.
Our great friend David Ferdinand joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, and the KIDO Talk Radio app. So you're in Middleton, and it's funny because we value this show as a Treasure Valley.
Yeah.
Every other media outlet, it's all about Boise. And, good for them. We love to be part of the Treasure Valley. I was talking to a real estate agent just getting her license. And she goes, well, out in Middleton. I go, dude, Middleton's great. That's God's country. But home values are blowing up everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. There are some, I think there's still houses to be had. When you look at the structure, and I spend a lot of time looking at properties for investors. I look at a lot of properties that are going from residential to commercial use because of the need for certain types of land.
Right.
As you look at a property that's in downtown Middleton, and that quite frankly, cities that are growing need to also have a balanced tax base. Every year they turn in their L2 form to the county, and the county says, okay, and in the county, Canyon County, there are 8 cities. We could have a quiz and find out if everybody knows what the 8 cities in Canyon County are.
Wow.
Yeah. There's those cities then set their budgets and then get an L2 form to the county that says, here's the tax that we need in order to operate our city. So you want to balance both commercial and residential so that you do not put that tax
and that's the challenge of Canyon County. Not a lot of businesses there.
Well, they're growing.
We've talked about that in the past.
Yeah,
though, yeah.
we have, and that's something that infrastructure. That's what I was talking about a little earlier. I think that's where it's deemed necessary then that the city councils, the planners, the P&Z commissions, the urban renewal boards that are still active, those people really need to take a hard look at how they are investing the dollars that the taxpayers have given them in order to provide the infrastructure for that necessary growth.
More coming up with David Ferdinand as we take a look at growth in our Treasure Valley. And maybe he'll give us some good tips on how to find that affordable property. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Waking up on the right side. Don't forget the Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic coming up next week. Going to be very exciting. Once again, Anamosa Park, thanks to CapEd Credit Union and so many sponsors that have made that happen. A free and open event, and that is in Boise. Joining us is, I guess you'd say the voice of Canyon County. I was going to say the king of Canyon County. Probably wouldn't like that. David Ferdinand joins us here on KIDO Talk Radio, a radio station that when it was on 630, you were a big part of.
Well, 58.
58.
It was on 580 on the dial.
You were 580, and then okay.
and then KIDO 630. I was
right.
on KFXD to begin with,
which was 580.
Which was 580.
Right.
Now we don't want to confuse.
It's very confusing.
But
yes.
now KIDO is on 580 on the dial, and
yep.
and it was 630 when I was on there. But that was back in the 80s. And Kevin, we were playing country music, man.
Right.
But we did a little talk too.
Right.
We had some fun, but it was a great experience as you're growing up in radio in this valley. Back when, in the '60s, late '60s, when I started in radio, there were about 8 radio stations in this valley. How many today?
20, 30?
Over 30.
Yeah, over 30.
Well, the signals that actually come in from the New Plymouth and
sure.
Fruitlands and all over the place.
Right, but, let's put a plug in for this radio station.
Yes.
And, the format that we have, the spoken word. Obviously,
great.
To me, the most powerful way to communicate with people. Look, Facebook, television, everyone else, pale imitations of the spoken word on radio.
Kevin, you hit a very important part of our communication right with what you said. The opportunity of listening to a nuance in a speaker. I think of that great voice that you had on the radio the other morning in the form of Michael Harrison. Oh, my goodness, that guy's voice. Here's a guy that created the history of rock and roll, back in the days when he was doing that. And now the very, the Heavy 100, all of the things that Talkers does. I was so thrilled that you had him on the radio on your program the other morning. But listen to that man's voice.
Right.
And the nuance of communication. It is a little difficult to see in a text, especially if autocorrect makes the word something other than what it should be.
Right.
What an incredible intuition you just said. The intuitive process of how you communicate, that understanding of the spoken word. Those that can only read a text. I love trying to listen back to the translators when it goes from voicemail to my translated into some sort of text so that you can read it. It is hilarious to see that kind of thing. It's almost the same thing when you're trying to communicate through the written word versus the spoken word, as you've said today. KIDO is very important in that process. You think of all the people that call in and listen to your program each and every day. What a difference it makes if they can hear exactly what you're trying to say.
And that's the power.
That's
right.
Tremendous.
Whether it's us here locally or Sean Hannity.
Oh, wow.
Dave Ramsey, Glenn Beck. It's a lost art these days.
Yes. Well, the process of just communicating. That's why when someone says, "What do you mean we used to? We didn't have cell phones." No, we didn't have cell phones. You actually had to find a telephone booth or go back home to do your business. Today, one of the problems we do have is that people are doing business on their telephones, driving around the valley and not paying attention to the traffic, which I experienced on the way over here this morning. It's one of those things that inattentive process. And we won't talk about where Meridian's going right now. But.
Well, we're going to talk about a lot of things. And speaking of which, traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Thank you, Larry. Always appreciate the reports from Larry Gebert. Let's continue on with the business of attracting people. Many years ago, you and I talked about you being an ambassador, you going to
That's
places
right.
like California to lure people here. You don't have to do that anymore. Businesses.
Businesses are coming. I still think it's good to have our message out there, even though we get written up in these news articles that say, this is a great place to live.
Right.
The television programs that are now coming out of the Boise Valley, this Boise Boys.
Right. HGTV.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about the awareness of our valley, it does create at least the awareness when somebody goes into their area and say, where do you want to expand? And they start looking at where do we put our thumbtack or where do we put our mark on a map to say, okay, where do we want to expand? What is a fast-growing area that we can invest our money in the market and receive the kind of cap rates that people are looking for? They do look around the company or the country, Kevin, and they say, all right, where can we get the kind of return we need to get from our dollars, whether it be a great fund that an insurance company is managing or some of these investor groups that are across the country. They are looking for marketplaces, and that's why we went to some of the areas where we knew that people wanted to come out of, somebody's calling it now the cow invasion. Have you heard this?
No.
California, Oregon, and Washington. It's the invasion of the cows. They are coming back to Idaho, And it's California, Oregon, and Washington that are looking for. It's been on your program too, where people say, we are looking for those conservatives that are attempting to get out of areas. I mean, you've said
there's libs too, though.
Well,
you got the libs coming in.
Libby,
lib.
Have you met any libs that are coming from those places?
They don't self-identify yet. I've tried.
Well,
I said, show me your lib card.
All right. I have met.
You like that one?
Yeah, I do. I have met and spoken with and helped people, as they're moving their businesses and they're moving their homes to this area.
So you're aiding and abetting.
I must be.
You are.
I enjoy working with people and trying to help them make a better lifestyle for themselves and their families.
All right, more coming up with David Ferdinand. He'll be here for the hour. Kevin Miller in the morning. Do want to remind you, one of the favorite events, not only for the staff here at Town Square Media, but for the entire Treasure Valley, it was featured on the Boise Boys, the Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic. It is coming up next week. It is free thanks to our friends at CapEd Credit Union. You can go to spiritofboise.com, Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic on Facebook. You can go to our website. We hope to see you there, and the Nightglow. And again, thanks to CapEd Credit Union for making that happen. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Waking up on the right side, David Ferdinand joining us. He has admitted that he's helping the people from California come in here and take over. Just kidding.
Careful.
Now, if people want to get a hold of you, commercial real estate, residential real estate, how can they do that? We appreciate you joining us so early in the morning.
Well, David at davidferdinand.com.
Ooh,
you can go there.
That's big.
Had that URL a long time and finally put it to use. My website's getting a little work done to update, but they can always go there. Of course, you can always look a licensed realtor up on realtor.com, or
for a good time look up David Ferdinand,
our MLS, and check it out. There's a few David Ferdinands in this country, I found out.
I can imagine. So. Back to the growth of the Treasure Valley. Did you see this coming when you were in office as a Canyon County Commissioner? Remember, different times.
Yeah, was
great recession.
Right. Terrible recession.
Thanks to Governor Otter, Lieutenant Governor Little, they managed the rainy day fund. But even then, you remember the last years of the recession. And folks, if you weren't here, the state actually had to delay the tax returns so they could get the revenue in to pay people.
That's right.
We did a lot better than most states, but let's go back to that time.
Well, and I can explain a little of what happened in Canyon County, because having been there serving with Steve Rule and with Kathy Alder, we took a really hard look. In fact, we got a call from the state of Idaho, the finance director, and he said, David, you guys are not going to get any sales tax money. Now, that was part of our budget. In fact, that was a $6.5 million part of our budget, $6.5 million. And so here's what we did. We got the entire elected officials group together, along with all department heads, and I went into a meeting and we said, guys, looks like we're going to have to cut 7% of our budget in 1 week. Now, this was January of 2008, and there was no money coming in. And so you were forced to cut that budget. We found fund balances that had not been utilized. The sheriff's department had a tremendous budget for some new cars and some things that they hadn't purchased yet. So guess what? Everybody got along, went to the table, and said, we're going to cut that. In 1 week, $6.5 million. The last $500,000 came from our salaries.
Right.
The first ones that we cut were the commissioners, so that they could say that what we were attempting to do is keep our county alive and keep money in the pockets of those people that are the business and the taxpayers that help fund those necessary process to fund government. But not to the point that it hurt those people that are the taxpayers. So that happened. The next year, we actually, we laid a lot of people off that were not that were not being utilized, and then we started hiring people back when it got better. But our budget at that time, Kevin, was $67 million. You know what the budget is coming up?
What's that?
In Canyon County, I think it's around $104 million now. So tremendous change.
Sure.
And obviously, like you said, there are more people here and more services that are needed. However, those were some pretty lean times. But because we made the decision to cut the budgets and not overspend, I think we came out of that recessionary time much better than we would have.
Well, and again, very different from the world we live in today. David Ferdinand joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning. Now, I'm going to ask you a tough question, there, David Ferdinand. Okay. You're not going to be able to sing your way out of this.
Okay.
The jail issue in Canyon County.
Mm-hmm.
This has been. Was this the fourth attempt?
That was the fourth attempt to pass a bond.
Right.
Never at that level.
So it was the most expensive.
Yeah, the most expensive.
Okay, for people that, again, this is their news fix. God bless them for trusting us for this hour for the news fix.
Yeah.
But they're not going to get it from anywhere else. Take us inside. What is the deal with the jail? Because what we hear with the news reports is things are bad. People, the inmates are getting out.
Yeah.
Bad things are going to happen. You know this issue more than anybody else. Your thoughts?
Well, and I've served on at least I've sat in. I haven't served as much as I would like to have done, but going through this last process of really trying to say, okay, how many jail cells do you really need? What kind do you need? I'll tell you, Darren Ward, who is the captain over the jail, that guy, has a heart to serve the community. I think Darren does a great job. And my feeling was when my group of commissioners were in there, we had a plan. We'd gone through the process of we really didn't want to do the last bond, number 3, but we had a citizens group that wanted to do that, and we allowed them to do it. We never contributed any funding to any of those campaigns. We looked at how do we put this all together and provide the services as we needed to grow. Commissioners are responsible to provide for the building. And so the sheriff is responsible to make sure that people are incarcerated. The process after they go through the prosecuting attorney's process. But we looked at doing a pay as you go, $3 to $5 million a year, and build the amount of cells up to 750. That would probably, as we looked at it this last year, that would probably take care of the next 10 years. Why they wanted to go to, 1,018 or 1,180 or whatever the number was, it came from the latest study that they got from the group from Seattle, who was also going to build it. Now, we're not sure why, and I'm not sure as a citizen of the county why the temporary cells are not in the parking lot yet. But that number would really help out. And if they can get those there now, right, and then step back and take a look and say, okay, where can we put this? Create a growth area around the county buildings and create a, kind of like an overlay area like you do in an airport. Right. And as houses become available, I know that the county, I know that the head of facilities continues to look for opportunities in order to see just what the citizens groups are going to do to help them and get some input. I think they need to get more input from the community as well, and then pay as you go. Isn't that a great idea?
Well, it's what the rest of us have to do, and certainly the federal government could learn a lesson from that. David Ferdinand joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Tech Radio. What did you make as someone who has been in the arena, who has, let's face it, when you're a public official, you listen a lot.
Oh, boy, you do.
So did you have to, I don't want to lead the witness here, what did you make of how Ada County finagled that jail expansion, the West Ada DMV?
Yeah.
Hey, we've had taxes on the books, but we haven't charged you.
Well.
Hello, everybody. Boo. We're going to do it now.
Well, it's still tax money, Kevin.
Right.
It's still tax money. It's like when we in Canyon County fought mission testing.
Yeah.
We went through a whole process to fight that.
I remember that. Yeah.
And one of the reasons we did is, even $10 or $11 for some people, take $11 out of your pocket. That may be lunch today. That may be lunch tomorrow.
Now, I have to disclose a conflict of interest when you speak of emissions.
Yeah.
Because I am a duly deputized appointed member of the Ada County Air Quality Board.
There you go.
It's a very prestigious
I love that.
organization that has been mandated by the EPA.
Yeah, and you have to be a part of it. And, of course, we really need to take a great look
But
at...
back to your point, though, Canyon County said,
No.
Ada County, EPA said, you're going to do this.
And, Kevin, we found out that, a great amount of the air pollution, when it goes up into the air, cooks in the atmosphere, that a lot of the particulates that went into the air actually came from sagebrush, and from cow flatulence. And so if you look at those things and you say, can we really make a difference? Look, if a car's not operating correctly, it's going to cause a problem. And we need to take a hard look at that. But if most of the cars that are newer than a certain age really don't put any kind of particulates back into the air, then what are we doing? And so we had to follow the money, really.
Back to emissions, though.
Yep.
And this is something, whether you're on Chinden, whether you're on the connector, wherever you are, whether you're in downtown Nampa, you're hanging out, getting ready to go into the Indian Creek Steakhouse or in Cuna or what have you. The most frustrating part, I think, that people have with emissions is whether it's a truck or a car, and all of a sudden the black smoke comes out, or buses or what have you, and you go, my little 4-cylinder is not doing anywhere near the damage, but I have to go to the emissions station. And look, those people that run those things, they're salt of the earth people, the owners there.
Oh, yeah.
But, they're not making a lot of money, and a lot of people aren't happy to see them. But I'm thinking, what's the deal when we have these big monstrosities contributing to the dirty air?
Yeah. Well, and quite frankly, there's your equality. They just want to make sure that they make everyone miserable equally. And bless these guys, these service stations and the people that we told DEQ and EPA, look, we don't want to bring special things to town. We want those people that are already here if you're going to create a place where we have to have our vehicles tested, we want to make sure that it is, as you said, the salt of the earth people that are, not saying that these other guys aren't, but we wanted to make sure that we took we kept a close look on what was going on. Take a look at what those guys get, maybe a few dollars out of that $11.
If that, yeah.
Yeah, they need to get $2 or $3, but now think about that. That doesn't even pay the guy's time in there. What have you always said? Follow the money.
Follow the money. We're following David Ferdinand here. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, I'm going to get you with this one.
Okay.
The rise of Meridian.
Okay.
And how did Meridian all of a sudden become, a lot of people say, the place to be? And on one side you have the state capital of Boise with its institutions.
Yeah.
You have Canyon County. And then you have in the middle this place called Meridian where a lot of people are living in. And how did we go from a median home price of $150,000, $200,000 to $330,000 in less than a couple years? David Ferdinand, we're going to put you on the spot. We're going to ask you those questions.
All right.
That's coming up next. Don't forget, everybody, Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic coming up next week. Ann Morrison Park. Details, spiritofboise.com. We would love for you to be a part of it. Does it cost you anything? No. Thanks to our friends at CapEd Credit Union. And remember, coming up, we're going back to school. Hopefully we'll go back and see our friends, the Nampa High School Bulldogs, and others as we promote our schools and secure our future. Brought to you again by CapEd Credit Union. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning. Good morning, Maggie. Sometimes you have Maggie on your mind. Our great friend David Ferdinand joining us here from Canyon County. on KIDO Talk Radio. So how did Meridian become the place to be? Or is it, you're a Canyon County guy, can you admit that?
I think that's a great question. And, those of us that are, raised in the Valley, it's kind of okay. If there weren't enough jobs, if there wasn't enough industry in the west side of the Valley, and they had to drive through Meridian to get to Boise, if I can save another 15 minutes on the freeway or on the expressway interstate, they're going to stop. And as you make ground available, we remember when we were kids, we would drive along the road, which was Highway 30. Are you with me? Getting from Nampa to Boise, it was the old Highway 30. It was a 2-lane road. 1965, approximately 64, 65, they actually split the valley and brought in the interstate. That was one of the determining factors of Meridian. If you take a look at just exactly how that road goes, there were some areas across the country. Remember the stories about, especially old Highway Route 66. If the road didn't go through there,
right,
they wouldn't have commerce. So Meridian became that spot as you went from the western part of the valley into Boise, to the capital city where the seat of government was and all that sort of thing. I think that had a lot to do with it.
Right, but I mean, in the modern history, you have Eagle Road.
Yeah. Wow.
You guys have an equivalent to Eagle Road in Canyon County, the Boulevard?
Well, the Boulevard's not quite. I think we're seeing Chinden, which, the plans for Chinden were really a cross Valley Expressway. And there you go with Meridian.
Right.
What ended up happening is when Mayor Tammy DeVeerd would talk to developers that wanted to develop along Chinden Road, they put in stop lights. What does that term indicate?
Right.
Stops the traffic, and of course allows for an access to those areas. Look at what happened when Fred Meyers went in. Those kinds of things. If you develop those properties, you will grow around those roadways.
What do you say?
That's my point.
What do you say to people like Dave Petzo, though, that think a 10-mile road is out yonder, and we're talking about.
Whoa.
We're talking about Chinden, Linder, where Costco's coming in, and everybody's moving in. So, as someone who's been part of the plan,
right?
What's the planning for this? The roads are. Look, you were delayed coming in. The roads are overloaded.
I was, and the number of minutes that you sit just to get through 4 stoplights. To come in on those roads, that is exasperating. Being a part of the program, I've been part of, transportation issues and the plans. Let me tell you, the guys that were planning have planned well in this valley. Problem is if the funding gets moved to another project and does not purchase right-of-ways so that they can, in fact, expand, there's the problem. The 4-lane expressway that was to be Chinden Boulevard, was stopped just because of growth on the east end of the valley, and because of funding. You look at Highway 16 from Emmett. A lot of people don't realize one of the impetus to that Highway 16 is to make sure that you could get the milk delivered.
Well, that's a different world now.
Wow, take a look at it though. But if that road can then be funded, let's say another $300 million, Kelvin, to get it to the expressway, to the I-84 corridor, can you imagine how much better that would be? It would funnel some of the traffic off of the roads like State Street and those roads. So those are in the works. It's just funding that makes a difference.
All right, traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. And thank you, Larry. David Ferdinand joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. So back to this issue, though, of state government. I'm going to ask you to expand on this for a minute. How do you see the next legislative session going? And I want you to give us a couple minutes on this.
Well, I love your comments on the getting the the grocery tax, repealed, that there's a lot of money that's involved in that grocery tax. And my wife and I were talking about it when we heard you the other morning talking about repealing the grocery tax and giving the money back to especially those that, have a tough time paying that grocery bill right now anyway. I do know that, government gets used to using those funds for their specific programs. So now what do you do? I can't remember, and maybe, Kevin, you know that number of just exactly what it would be to repeal the grocery tax. Do you have any idea what the dollar amount is?
As we say on this program, facts are overrated.
Well, let me tell you, that number is a pretty hefty amount. Now, I did like your comments the other day is maybe take it down to 1% or, go down.
Cut it in half at least.
Cut it in half so that maybe the government after Trump made some of the tax cuts, you've seen that it's almost taken a year and a half now to get the state governments to catch up with that the non-collection of some of those taxes.
See, but my point is, if you can buy the old HP campus.
Oh, yeah. I heard that.
What was it? 130, and then you've got to do the infrastructure repairs, as you know. And Tommy Alquist said they outbid his group by 20, 30 million.
Yes.
If you could afford to do that, you could afford to give the folks a break.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and that is, I guess, one of the big questions. However, they will tell you, you got to plan for the future. They are not making any more land, Kevin. And so we
sound like a real estate agent.
We have to make the best use of what we've got.
David Ferdinand, we have a minute left. Your thoughts?
Wow. I love this valley. Born and raised here. We, as a family, too, experience those slowdowns and trying to get from one end of the valley to the other. I'm hoping and praying that we keep leadership or get new leaders that say, we've got to do this now. We cannot wait because it will be too late.
David Ferdinand, we need to have you back.
Love to.
All right. We'll probably see you in
Thanks,
November.
All right.
Thank you. All right. David Ferdinand, check him out today. Really always appreciate his guidance and insight. And it's funny, we've been going back and looking over a lot of videos, and there you are at a lot of our events.
Well, I like being there and seeing what's going on.
And if you'd like to keep in touch with us, KIDOTalkRadio.com and our app. Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.